How's it going, y'all? This is McFrostyBoy, and in this video, I'll be walking you through another one of my preferred Kings Canyon rotation strategies for ranked play in Apex Legends. This time, we're actually going to work with the northeast part of the map, instead of me getting my directions mixed up like last time. With this strategy, as well as the map room strategy from last week's video in hand, you'll have coverage of almost every location east of the cage, and except for a few extreme cases, you should be able to pilot into a reliable drop each time. So if you haven't checked out my video on the map room drop strategy, make sure to give it a look. Okay, time for the pretty moving pictures. Where's this guy with the mask? This particular landing is a rig first landing strategy. While the rig isn't quite as loot dense as the map room, it definitely has its fair share, and as always, quickly looting and moving on from this location is going to be critical to helping set up your first fight. It's actually a slightly downhill location, so it can be reached from about 1,200 meters away. To help your squad figure out how to path through this area more quickly, here's the exact spots and landing locations I recommend. If your squad is uncontested, then one person should land on the back building, looting it and the adjacent bins before potentially taking a stop up at the center before moving on. The next player should land on the T building, here on the high side, taking the loot inside as well as the loot in the nearby bins. I don't recommend wasting the time on the little building on the side here unless you see something like a high rarity shield through the windows. This player can opt to meet their teammates at the center or move towards the next location. The last teammate should land on either the center or on the bins on the west side near the center if the squad intends to meet together on the charge tower. Using the charge tower takes some extra time, but there's definitely some legends and comps where having the ults is a high impact factor, so just make sure to coordinate with your squad ahead of time. You don't need to wait for your teammates to reach the center to start the charge tower, they just need to get there before the charge finishes. Some legends just won't get quite as much mileage out of their ults as others in the upcoming fights. Ideally, nobody should be doubling back or leaving their pathing unless there's a situation where purple or potentially blue shields are available. Just grab everything in arm's reach and keep what immediately fits in your loadout and fill your extra space in the bag with purple loot followed by ammo that your squad mates can use. You'll dump all of this stuff when you meet up before exiting the area. In total, looting this location shouldn't take your squad more than 1 to 1.5 minutes from when your boots touch the ground. If you are contested, I recommend landing close together. Preferably, you're able to secure the high T building if possible, but you should only directly contest enemies on the building if you'll have the numbers advantage. If all three enemies intend to land T, then your squad can grab the center and the low T building before regrouping on the far side away from the enemy high ground. If more than one enemy squad is contesting you, or if you're just uncomfortable directly contesting the rig, you can land at the low rig. The loot is more sparse, but it also means that you'll finish the looting rotation faster. I would personally avoid contesting a squad over the low rig loot. If you can't land in rig or low rig, then you should be looking at broken relay or swamps, which will most likely be decided based on the path of the dropship. I'm personally willing to contest one squad at these locations. If those locations are too busy, then you'll finally look at capacitor or labs. I won't get too specific with these landings, as honestly it's kind of ridiculous at this point if you're considering this option, since it means that there's around 6 to 7 squads crammed into what must be less than 15% of the total map. This particular game, we stretched the rig, and I'm not able to do a good job of scouting out the particular landing locations of teams near us since I'm busy piloting the drop. Unfortunately, I think my good habit of scouting, even if I'm piloting most of the time, has led my squad mates to depend on me for providing that information instead of gathering it themselves. This means that we're flying blind for the first few minutes of the game, but thankfully not very many squads land on this side of the map, so we don't get punished for failing to gather this information. I'm drawing attention to this because it's an easy, preventable mistake that's just an attention to detail kind of thing that often has huge repercussions down the line. Because we had to stretch, we aren't able to directly land in our ideal looting locations as I described, but you can see how our squad distributes itself to eventually reach them, using the low T building, the center, and the high T building for loot. Since I have a tendency to loot more quickly than my squad mates, I take the high T building since I have to run all the way over there before getting any loot, and because my particular loot path for this landing will force me to double back, which I'm hoping will slow me down relative to my teammates. In spite of these suboptimal looting conditions, I'm still walking out of the rig to the top of capacitor in about 1 minute from the time that we landed. I don't know exactly where they are. Again, it might seem like I obsess over looting speed, but you can see how important it is when I spot the enemy horizon moving to the T building above Capacitor. You can see our Bloodhound reaches and is looting the triple bins almost a full 30 seconds after me, and really only has any urgency to do so because they notice that I'm already here. If we had all looted at Bloodhound's pace, we might have missed the horizon tactical, played into Capacitor, gotten caught out by enemies watching us from the high ground, and gotten rolled after letting the enemies get an easy knock. If we had looted at the Wraith's pace, we definitely would have missed this important warning sign. I'm serious, looting slowly kills. Okay, well, now you've got your boots on the ground and your initial loot squared away. Let's go through the particular fights you can expect early here. The most common and desirable case is when you land alone in rig, and the remaining enemy squads land in Capacitor and Labs. After wrapping up on the rig, you'll hit the triple bins here. If squads wind up fighting in Capacitor, you're going to third party them with zero integrity. If one squad lands a Capacitor, you should engage them, hopefully catching them flat-footed while they're still looting. If they take the zipline to the T building on height here, just enter Labs and use the redeploy to either take high ground or better positioning from them. If you actually haven't entered Capacitor yet, just like our squad, you can play around the outside of Capacitor or take the jump power to achieve similar results. If there's fighting inside Labs, you can just walk into the back of whichever squad is closer to you. If there's fighting outside Labs, then you can handle the situation similarly to how we dealt with a Capacitor squad at the T building above Capacitor. If you're contested at the rig, as mentioned, ideally you secure the high T building. It's one of the most powerful high ground positions in the area, unusually loot dense, and allows for some solid maneuvers to close distance on the enemy depending on their positioning. The roof also gives some really nice head glitches because it's slanted, so make sure to take advantage of that. The center is less than ideal as a position because there are multiple angles of attack when pushing the platform itself. The cover on top is relatively sparse, and because it's in the center, it's possible to open lines of fire on it from all directions. It can definitely be a situationally useful position to pass through, but it's not my first go-to option, and I recommend moving to a different position if you're taking too much pressure. If you wound up on the low ground to the main part of the rig, you can apply pressure to the center before looping around to the left or right to reach some decent cover and negate the high ground advantage. If you're working from low rig, then you should be able to take the jump tower to make a play from the high ground on the crane, or take the zipline across to fight from the high T building depending on how lucky your squad is with the loot and where the enemies are positioned. If the enemy attacks your high ground while you're on low rig, you'll want to immediately move away into swamps or prep to hold a building. Squads landing in broken relay will attack the rig quads, similarly to how the squads working from the low ground T building in the rig did, and they'll want to be vigilant of squads trying to cross the primary bridge, use the jump tower, or cross using the zipline here. Swamps, Capacitor, and Lab squads will likely play the fight similarly to how low rig squads play this fight, and if the corner of the map is this busy, you'll definitely want to take it slow and take care not to let yourself get third partied as you clear this corner of the map. As we observed earlier, our squad is dealing with a scenario where a single enemy squad has reached the T building on high ground. We play around the outside of Capacitor and find the enemy squad has been ridiculously slow looting and that the horizon is just dropping off to rejoin her squad in the low ground as we arrive. We get to use the high ground to scout out the enemy squad and reach a nice piece of cover before the enemy can respond. Even though the enemy shot at us first, this fight is mostly taking place on our terms since we got to choose the location and timing, which is why the enemy is still regrouping as this fight starts. The enemy horizon winds up falling back down into my ult, giving us an opening to push off of, and the enemy is unable to get mileage out of the caustic since this fight happens before he can lay down his traps. I got a caustic.
What is purples?
Oops, I just missed that spray. It wasn't the best use of our high ground advantage, nor was it really the cleanest fight, but the way the enemy squad trickled into ours drives home the clear consequences of their abysmally slow looting, since they were spread out and still picking up stuff. Alright, let's move on to the mid game. For those of you wondering why that took so much longer than the map room strat, it's because there's a lot more options in terms of viable landing locations out here. Either way, at the end of that, you should wind up somewhere around here. and should be reasonably confident that there are no remaining enemy squads to your northeast. For northeast pulls, aggressive squads will look for a position on Death Hill or near the cage for gatekeeping purposes. I also should mention that in any scenario, aggressive squads may opt to roam to punish a respawn if they see one, or third-party any fighting that they hear. More passive squads will look to continue to patrol the northeast corner of the map, potentially doubling back for relay or swamps loot that they may have missed, or looking for crafters or beacons. For southeast pulls, aggressive squads will probably attempt to either gatekeep at the cage or third-party the fighting that is likely to break out near the river. They could opt to stop over at Death Hill to see if they can catch a squad trying to rotate in from the north, but most southeast pulls don't leave Death Hill in the next circle. More passive squads will probably try to slip in via swamps or hydrojam before finding some high ground and repulsor or using the map room. For southwest pulls, you'll need to hoof it over to the cage or Death Hill. You may find squads attempting to gatekeep you, and you should be prepared to fight regardless of whether you intend to play aggressively or not. Aggressive squads should proceed to roam for fights, most likely finding some action near market, and more passive squads should try to beeline for the edges of the map near water treatment, runoff, or airbase. Finally, for northwest pulls, aggressive squads will probably find a gatekeeping opportunity on Death Hill or potentially on Bunker Hill, or they may get involved in the fighting that tends to break out near containment. The cage is often left out of northwest pulls. More passive squads will look to rotate via artillery into crash site, avoiding contact with enemy squads before slipping into the back of the circle. In our example, our squad is dealing with a northeast pull, and we've all got 3 KP, so we're looking pretty good on that front. We opt to make the more passive play, taking the supply drop that's coming near us and also going to broken relay to craft batteries. We keep patrolling this part of the map and grab a beacon scan over by the forest once the circle closes. We get tracks on an enemy squad moving south to north and try to find them. I make an incorrect guess that the enemy is trying to respawn someone in artillery, but the enemy, fortunately for us, botches their engage.
Well, they saw shit. I don't know what they're doing.
They attempted to wall the combo.
Ow. Oh, hold up. Wait, what? I fell off.
Oh, I throw a counter ult in order to slow them down, which ends up pinning everyone but the Horizon behind the tank, and she winds up suicidally hurling herself into my squad mates. I also register damage on one of the enemies, and since I just broke one of them, I move in on them. Yeah, she was all on her own. The rest of them are back here.
I'm phoenixing.
I wind up taking a lot of damage for pathing so aggressively. Looking back, both of my teammates are full, and I just try to trade for damage instead of drawing this fight out any longer, but my attempts to use cover to protect myself are good enough to compensate for the toilet bowl aim at the end. Yeah, he just got sent back. Winning this fight helps us keep the north side of the map clear, and we move on to late game. As we move into late game, passive squads will continue the trend of playing the edge of the map, navigating early to power positions in end ring, and more aggressive squads will continue to roam and play the edge of the ring, gatekeeping squads with each successive circle close. Late game and end game are both more specific to the particulars of the end circle and squad positions, and the general rotation strategy at this point ends. I'll walk you through what our squad does here and the way we manipulate the position to help us secure the win. With full KP and bags full of endgame loot, our squad is definitely prepared to make the more passive play by securing a power position for endgame. We grab the forest beacon after the circle closes again. DK and I whine about this end circle, since we both feel like the fight that breaks out over this ending is super annoying, and initially our rotation to an endgame position seems unclear to me. We realize that we can just play the north side of the circle and reach the high side of Capacitor with little risk of getting gate kept by the squads currently fighting inside of Capacitor. We reach the high side and hop up on the pipes where we farm damage and suppress the enemy squads inside Capacitor. When we take pressure from the east, we just drop down into the cover below the pipes. We see 2 squads fighting to the northeast, and there were 2 squads fighting in Capacitor, so that leaves all squads accounted for. If we push down into Capacitor, a squad could take our place here at the top, and if we leave the Capacitor squads unattended, one of them will leave and probably backside us in the final fight. So, for now, we're just going to hold our height and keep the Capacitor squads trapped down there. The northeast fighting shifts over into the high ground spot in the circle.
I still got port, but I'm gonna try to wait.
We'll probably...
That's fine, I guess. That's just really inconvenient.
You might need a portal soon. I'll try and ult them off their high ground.
Alright. Just watch them down there.
Oh shit, that's gonna hit the tree, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, fuck me. That's actually gonna land super short now.
I knocked one of them at the replicator. Try to finish. Oh, hold up.
Watch over here. Up on top.
I don't like this spot, but it's where we gotta be.
Yep. Watch out above us.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they distract each other somewhat, but we get forced down into the low ground. We successfully reach the south side of the ring, and it's actually impossible for squads to be anywhere but directly to our north, which is really good for us. The squads fighting on the high ground finish, and there's only 3 squads remaining, which means that there's still an enemy squad trapped down in Capacitor. Short of a Pathfinder zip, they're trapped down there. I don't even think a Horizon Q will reach high enough.
It's like right around here.
Well, there's like one squad that's like down inside the Capacitor area still, so they're dead.
Okay, so basically,
it's just these guys here. So
you guys just need to distract them and try to crack them, and I'll just phase and heal.
No, there's still a squad up here.
Yeah, but you guys distract the people up there. We don't need to push them. It's final ring right now.
Yeah, so we just have to beat this squad up ahead, above us, and then we win. Like, we can't lose to the squad above us.
Right there?
Yeah.
He's by himself.
I don't know. No, he's not. No, he's not. Don't get...
He's down. He's down. He's down. You ate this. We punish the enemy Gibraltar for pushing forward alone, and I throw a wacky dome to attempt to set up a thirst on him, but he winds up outside of it still. Either way, this leaves the enemy with a 1v3 situation, and the enemy Horizon suicide pushes us to end the game. Somewhere in there, the Capacitor squad died trying to make it out of there. That wraps up everything I have for you all this time. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay frosty, my friends. Good luck, have fun, and I'll see you next time.